Hi, Sue Johnson here. Let's talk mittens. Little update on my hair. A year ago, in November, I had COVID, and one of the after effects apparently is losing your hair. I used to have long hair, and it was coming out in handfuls after I had recovered from COVID. And I decided to cut my hair, and then I went to a hairdresser and got it cut really short. And this is my growing back my hair. I actually have enough for a wee bit of a ponytail now. So it's been hard to know what to do with it. But in the meantime, you know what? I'm having fun knitting mittens. So come join me. Well, I had previously recorded this today, and every time I turned on the camera button and thought the film was rolling, it wasn't. And every time it was off, I was actually filming myself, if that makes sense. So the reason for this video is to show you the mistakes I've made, because beginner knitters make mistakes. Even people who have been knitting for a while make mistakes. As one girl says, we fudge a lot. And so I'm just going to show you some of the mistakes I've made in knitting, in particular with mittens. So if some of this is repeat, just go with it. You'll see it later. Okay, where should I start? I started actually my video with this mitten, which was a Newfoundland pattern, and it was actually supposed to be a full mitt, but I was afraid to knit the salt and pepper decreasing because I'm still not very good at my decreasing. Here's one where I actually did manage the decreasing, but you can see I didn't continue the salt and pepper, which is alternating one color and the other. I didn't do that up here because I thought I'm just going to try it with a solid color, and the same thing with the thumb. I was afraid to do it on the thumb. I tried a little bit of salt and pepper decreasing on the top of this mitten, and you might think, well, what's wrong with that mitten? Well, let me tell you. This mitten's actually pretty good, but did you see the difference in the number of, should I say, the way I use the wool? This one has more salt and pepper look to it. This one hasn't got as much. And it's very pointy, you know, pointy. Whereas this is rounded. So this one worked. This one, not so much. But who cares? You know what? People buy mittens, and in this case, I will be selling them. And they purchase the mittens without seeing the errors. I'm just going to pull up another error and see if you can spot it. This is two mittens that I started, and I'm doing them both at the same time, like double pointed needles, double pointed needles. I do 10 rows here, 10 rows here, 20 rows, and so forth. These are at the point of creating the increase for the gusset when you do your mittens. So what's wrong with these mittens? Well, let me see. If I just put them exactly like that, you'll be able to see that I started this line of blue too late. This was actually the first mitten. So in other words, I did this gray cuff part too many times. But when you wear the mittens, they're on two different hands, and you're not likely to see that fault or that change. Here, I just noticed something else. When you're, there is a way to add your wool so that you don't get a sort of a ladder effect. See this little dip here? There is a way to add your wool so you don't get that dip. I did it on this one, but I didn't do it on the other one. Wait a minute. There is a bit of a dip. See? Error, error. Okay, that's it. The point is that you just have to go with it. You just keep making your mittens and keep knitting, and you're going to end up eventually with a mitten without too many errors. Or you can disguise the errors. This was some variation of knitting, not following a pattern, but just using some techniques that I had seen. And the cuffs are the right length. I have this little pickup stick method I use where I have some pickup sticks. So if I'm doing 20 rows, I'll have 20 sticks, and I move them over as I do a row. And that way I can get the cuffs the same length. But the difference with this one is that I created the gusset, which is when you're increasing for your thumbs. and I started my pattern too late, too soon, I forget which. If you hold the mittens like this, it's not too bad, but in truth, see the difference in the line there? This one's a little bit lower. But when you have one hand over here and one hand over here, you're not really going to notice it and scrutinize it, and definitely don't point out your mistakes if you're knitting mittens and selling them, or even if you're giving them away to family. This is a mitten that I knit. Most of them are worsted weight wool. Most of them I cast on 36 stitches in the cuff, and I do about 20 rows. Then I do 6 rows plain, then I start increasing for the gusset. So if you know some of the basics in knitting a mitten, you can knit almost any mitten. Now this one, I added an extra strand. So there's the worsted weight wool in this navy color, and then I added a variegated strand, which means it's changing color as you're going through your knitting. And so that made a larger mitten, which is fine because I have small hands. And some of the mittens I knit and sold at the market last Christmas, one lady said, I could never wear them. They're too small for my hand. I said, go ahead and try them on. They stretch. And she needed a larger mitten like this. So I can't make mittens based on my hands because they wouldn't always work. And you notice that these are fingerless mittens, which means they don't have a top on them like this. And the fingerless mittens are great for when you are texting, going into the store, pay for the gas, put your card out. You don't have to take your mittens on. You just keep wearing them. And, when I'm driving, well, no, I'm a passenger in the car. If it's really cold, I just sort of bundle up like that, like a muff. Know those muffs? The little fur things you put your hands in? Maybe I'm too old. So the other thing I have, okay, this is a pattern that I enjoyed knitting in a sweater, and I decided to do it in the mitten. And you gain an idea of the basics. So 36 stitches here, 6 rows, begin your gusset increase. At some point, you take your stitches for your thumb and you put it on a piece of, in my case, a piece of wool. So that's thumb stitches, and you finish the rest of it, and then you go back later and you pick up these stitches. So the problem I have is how to get all this big gap around here without making the mitten too big and bulky. Like, this is a fat thumb. Has way more stitches than they called for. I find the average pattern will say to put on hold 12 to 15 stitches, and then when you're ready to pick up those stitches, put them back on a needle, double pointed needles. You pick up maybe 1, 2, 3 stitches around. But then what happens is you end up with a hole. At least I end up with holes and gaps in around the thumb, and then you have to stitch it up. So for me, it's like, it's not really a smooth, like this is fairly smooth. This one is not too bad, but you can see a little error on that one. I need to fix that. Well, here's one. You know what? I think these mittens are probably one of the best ones I made, where there wasn't a big gap on the thumb. It's a nice smooth knitting up. Not sure why that happened. Sometimes it's the wool that you're working with. This was called the leaf pattern, and it's supposed to be a fingerless mitten. They say fingerless, it just gets cut off. And I used 2 strands of wool. I used the drop swish and some merino and blended it, and it makes a nice squishy mitten. And I followed the pattern, and this was brand new for me. I wanted to do some lace pattern work. Let's see that a little bit closer. So in the sample they used, I'll try to link the pattern, even though I don't know how to do links yet, but I can mention it. You can copy it out. They said, what am I saying now? The pattern, I forget. Oh well, we'll just move on, okay? I'm going to grab some more mittens. There were some sheep mittens I knit, and I gave them all away. And I was concerned about doing this salt and pepper, alternating one strand of wool on the other. And so I practiced on these. Again, 36 stitches, it's standard. Increase for your thumb and make the rest of your mitten. So you practice on smaller pieces like mittens so that you can increase your skill in knitting. What haven't I shown you? This is really basic, this one. In fact, I've done it in 2 different colors, and it's with this nice soft merino wool from Estelle. And again, just knit on 36 stitches, knit in the round. I have 2 versions, a red version and a blue, just to prove I actually have the mates. But I like this. And this one I went up a little bit higher, more towards the pinky. This one was a little bit lower. This is actually a good depth. So it's pretty easy. Knit and purl, ribbing, knit however long you want it to be. Come up here, do a gusset for your thumb, continue on, come back, pick up those thumb stitches. Bob's your uncle. He's not my uncle, he might be your uncle. Anyways, these are really soft. I really like them. And this is the mitten I have been wearing the most this winter. So what else do we have? We have arm warmers, which are basically the same sort of thing. You just put your ribbing on and just keep going all the way up. And instead of doing that little opening for your thumb and so forth, you just keep it like that. That's it. I got 2 of those. And again, this is a red worsted weight wool mixed with a small strand of DK, which gives it that sort of change in the color as you're going along. It just dresses it up, makes it look a little bit different, and you can have fun and you practice your skills. Sometimes what I do is I will knit the cuff on straight needles, not double pointed, just a straight needle, and I go back and forth, and then I will sew up the seam to join it. So you see how that's sewn? You see how it's different, and even that is a technique to learn. The point is this: these are hand knit items. I don't think they're meant to be perfect. It's not stuff that you're buying from a factory. So you go with your imperfections. And the same is true of your own personal nature. We are not perfect, so we go with the imperfections. And hopefully people accept our imperfections. And if they don't, who cares? You have to accept your own and accept the imperfections in other people. So now I'm going to continue on with the rest of this video that I made this morning when it was sunny. Now it's pouring rain. I don't know if you can see that. It is pouring rain out there. Let's see if I can. Nope, I can't make the camera bigger. Oh well, that's it. What does it matter? You've got weather where you are too. Okay, talk to you later. Watch the rest or quit now, whatever you want to do. And you know what they say: thumbs up, subscribe, share, comment, and I'll talk to you later. As knitters, we pick up wool because we're intrigued by the color, the design, the weight, the style. We might have an idea in mind at the time. We pick up patterns for the same reason, because we're intrigued by the color, the style, the design. In this case, I picked up 3 patterns in Newfoundland, St. John's, Newfoundland, and that's the most easterly province in Canada. So I was intrigued by this, picked these up 5 years ago, and I did try it once, and then got probably 2/3 of a mitten done and gave up. Now this you might recognize, because I was working on them with this mitten. But when I got to the top, I was afraid to do that salt and pepper decreasing to shape the top of the mitten. So I'm still working on that. These mittens, this is this pattern here. There it is. I know it looks a little bit different with the color, but you learn to read a chart for this and you do the salt and pepper. And they did salt and pepper. Sorry, I lost my pattern here. They did salt and pepper decreasing all the way to the top. And again, I got scared. So I just went to plain color because I wanted to learn how to actually do some of the decreasing. You decrease at 3 points in these mittens. And then also I think they did salt and pepper on the thumb, and I just did a plain thumb. It still works out. It's still a mitten that somebody might like. I like to challenge myself, and because my goal is to learn new techniques and improve my skills. Look, I actually did the salt and pepper decreasing up through the top of this mitten. Now you see the problem there? I got my whites on whites and my blues on blues, and it's supposed to be alternating. Let's see if I did that with this mitten. Yeah, a little bit. The row through there. But it's not as obvious in real life. On the camera, it's like, whoa, I see that now. But in real life, it doesn't show up quite the same way. I think because your eyes are sort of looking at the whole thing. And again, that's the thing. You can have mistakes. You can fudge it by just allowing the mistakes to go through a little bit. And nobody's really going to notice unless you point them out. And why would you point out your mistakes? It should just be, I used to always say, especially in counseling, maximize your strengths. Pay attention to them. Work on creating and making those an area of excellence, and minimize your weaknesses. So errors, mistakes, those are weaknesses. So I'm still working on my thumb design. Eventually I'm going to learn to read a pattern and do exactly what they say. Don't scrutinize my work too much. This one, again, when you're working on a big long project, as I was for my grandkids' sweaters, and I was knitting around and around, and it was very boring knitting. So then sometimes to switch it up, I'll just take a smaller project. So these are mittens that I have knit up and increased in terms of the gusset, knit both of them on double point needles at the same time, this one, that one. But I still made a mistake, and you can see it right here. I started my blue line too late compared to this one. This was the first mitten, and I started my blue line too late. But honestly, shift it, you won't even notice. When you're wearing them, it will not be as evident. I think what happens is people are attracted to a design, a color, a style of mitten. How does it look? And then they try it on, and then they go, oh yeah, it feels soft and it's warm and that's nice. And then they think about how practical it's going to be for them, and then they buy. I was surprised. I was asking $20 for my mittens because I'm using real merino wool, not acrylic. Like this is acrylic, and it just feels different. It knits up different. It's okay, especially if you're knitting for little kids and you know they're going to lose their mittens. Then go with acrylic, because you can buy a ball of wool, $5, and maybe create 2 or 3 mittens out of it. So, but the merino is more expensive, and this is a blend. So I was offering $20, and people actually bought them. That was great. Then I went to St. Jacob's Market, and they wanted $45 for a mitten like this. Honestly, they were using some of the Newfoundland design in their mittens, and they wanted $45. I can't do that. I mean, maybe there's some rich clientele in St. Jacob's. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for today. No mittens. You know why? 2 doves show up every year at the beginning of spring, and this year they're like a month early. I think it's going to be, we'll be putting all this stuff away and saving it for next fall. So in the meantime, happy knitting. Take on some mittens. They're a short, small project. You can develop your skills and have fun.